And we're recording. So today we're going to talk about soil, the story of soil profiles and things like that. So I just want to start with kind of rereading C44, C45, discussing it as we kind of go along. Just like, and we're taping this so you can go back and listen to it later. So soil begins to form when bedrock is broken apart into small pieces of rock and minerals. Rain, ice, wind, freezing, and thawing can do this. Chemical changes can do it too. So it starts off, we've got this layer of bedrock at the top, and you can really visualize, if you go back and look at the Brain Pop video that I'll also put on the blog, if you haven't gone back to look at it, the Brain Pop video on soil is really good. It gives you a really good visual of the actual process of soil being formed. But it starts off as that bedrock, and lots of factors come in. When I say factors, I don't mean multiplication problems. I mean things that can cause change. Rain, ice, wind, freezing, and thawing. You know, this weathering is that's the term for all those things. Rain, ice, thawing, freezing. Weathering is the big idea, and these are all types of weathering. So in the Brain Pop video, it mentions weathering. Well, these are examples of weathering: rain, ice, freezing, wind, all that stuff. We also have erosion as well. Erosion. What else breaks apart rock? Well, plants and animals that live in small rock pieces help break them apart further. Because you can imagine, you've got the solid bedrock. But over time, and not overnight, but over time, little pockets open up. And little animals can get in there, small, simple plants can get in there and start to either burrow, that's what the animals do, or what do the plants do?
Their roots dig
Louder.
Their roots dig down into the soil and break it up.
Right, their roots go down to the soil and also start breaking it up. And at first, it's not a big, huge, these roots aren't huge because they're simple plants, but eventually, the more complex plants and larger plants grow, and the roots get larger and larger. As plants grow downward, they pry apart rocks. Burrowing animals, now what does burrowing mean? Anybody? Digging, okay? What are some examples of burrowing animals? Moles. Earthworms. Ants. Okay. Centipedes. All sorts of, there's all sorts of insects, all sorts of bigger organisms, even mammals, like, even rabbits burrow. Moles. How many of you have moles in your yard? Yeah.
Frogs.
It's a big problem. Yeah, moles like to burrow. You can always tell where a mole's been.
It's like dirt, and there's like this mound.
Yeah, there's a little mound because they dig and they push it back out. So there's a little mound, and also you can tell if you walk in your yard and you feel like a soft spot.
Yeah.
You can tell where there's a mole's been burrowing through. But even though moles are a nuisance, how are they helpful? Eliza?
They help the soil in your. They help break down the bedrock even more.
Right, they help break down the bedrock even more. So they are nuisance, and they can be a problem because if you plant things, they can kind of mess up the root system as well. So they're kind of sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. So I know they can really tear up a yard and make it look unattractive. I think that's part of why we try to get rid of moles in various ways. So they create tunnels between rock pieces. Some of these tunnels fill with air and water. Water expands as it freezes, further breaking apart the rocks. I don't know if you've ever done this. How many of you ever put a water bottle, like a full water bottle, in the freezer because you want to have it later so it'll be cold?
Yes.
And what happens when it freezes?
It forms into that shape. It makes it bigger.
It breaks. Sometimes it can break.
If you put the Coke in there.
Yeah. Liquids, when they freeze, they expand. Okay, that's what they do. They expand because the molecules in the liquid are creating a solid. They're going from liquid form to solid form. So they expand. I talked about this, kind of a side note here, about why in the winter potholes form more. Because in the roads, they're just like in bedrock. There are little gaps form, and now earthworms and moles don't get into roads. Okay? But there are cracks that form. Water and air get in those cracks. If it freezes, it expands, and it makes the gap wider. That's why the winter you have a lot more potholes than you do in the summer. Especially in colder climates. Now, we haven't had a lot of really Lots of below freezing days. We've had some, but not a ton. But I can already notice where I drive around, there's lots of potholes. So just like the bedrock's broken down by weathering, roads are broken down by weathering. And so that can be an issue. That's a whole nother, So soil doesn't form on roads. I don't want you to get confused with that. But I wanted to make that idea that water does expand when it freezes. Bacteria and fungi also create soil. And what are bacteria and fungi? What group are they in as far as consumers? They're decomposers, right? Remember this? Who remembers the song? Mushroom, bacteria, and then there is mold. They eat non-living things, that is what I'm told. These are decomposers, they help to clean the earth. So remember decomposers because of their great worth.
Yeah, I remember.
I didn't remember that. So we've got the decomposers. And they decompose dead plants and animals for energy. The leftover plant animal matter is called humus, not hummus. I think it'd be a totally different world if humus was really hummus, or hummus was humus. But humus. Humus becomes mixed with rock pieces. Finally, a material that can be called soil is produced. Soil is a mixture of tiny rock particles, minerals, humus, water, and air. Okay, so you've got, and does this happen overnight?
No.
Does it happen in a few weeks?
No.
No, what are we talking? Hundreds of thousands of years.
For like one.
So the soil that's out there right now took a long time to form.
It's still forming.
And who remembers, and I've talked a little bit about this now, it's not on the pages, but we've talked a little about it. That idea that soil takes thousands of years to form, what process, there's something that happens in the world that is made worse because soil takes so long to form. I don't know what we talked about. Deforestation. Cutting down a forest, like the rainforest, that companies go in and they cut down all the trees in these rainforests, and they cut the trees down and they pull up the stumps and they leave this topsoil, right? Which sounds like not a bad thing, there's still topsoil.
But then
It rains, and then where does the soil go? Away. Why? Why doesn't it stay put? Eleanor.
Because its roots aren't there to keep it tight.
Exactly. The root system is gone. That root system that held that topsoil in place is gone. So we talked about, who remembers that word?
Runoff?
Yeah, it is runoff, yes.
Sedimentation.
Sedimentation, exactly. Sedimentation. But runoff was a good answer too, Polly. That's the same idea. So by deforestation is made even worse because you get rid of that the thing that holds the soil in place, so that topsoil washes away. And remember, once that topsoil is gone, that subsoil is somewhat fertile, but not nearly as fertile as the topsoil. And when I say fertile, what do I mean, Richard?